Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited that you're here and that you're ready to learn how you can unlock your best self with a mostly plant based diet. Let's get right into it. So, I want to start off with a quick story. And this story is actually not really so much about me, it's more about my lovely girlfriend, Jamie, here on the left. So, Jamie used to be a software engineer at Google for a long time. And she was never really in the software engineering business because she loved it. She was more there for the money and the financial security and the stability of it. And it's a thriving, growing industry. And there was a lot of perks. But she never really felt like she was very authentic there. As you can see here, maybe she didn't quite fit in with some of her coworkers. She had some good times, but it was something that never really felt like the right fit for her. And she got asked to go on a business trip to India, quite a long business trip to India. And this is kind of where everything boiled over for her. She was working with people that were, you know, on it. They were doing all of the stuff and they were so into it. And it was a stressful, crazy trip with crazy hours. And she was just kind of like, she was like, whoa, whoa, like we need to slow down a little bit here. Like what's happening? And it felt like a lot. It felt like too much. She was in sort of a developing country and there was so much going on. And it was just so much stress that when she got home from this India trip, she really just, she kind of hit a wall and her jaw locked up. She was having physical pain. She was expected to be back at work like the day after she got back, and she couldn't make it to work. And she actually had to withdraw from work. She had to go on disability. And it's this really scary time. And you'll notice that we don't have a lot of slides or any slides from this part because it was a pretty scary time for the both of us. We didn't really know what was wrong with Jamie. It was very challenging. She was in a lot of pain, and we weren't really sure what to do. We really were not sure what the solution was or really what was going on here. So she goes to a bunch of doctors, and the doctors say, "Oh, here's some muscle relaxers. Here's some pills. Take this, and you'll be back at work in no time." And Jamie kept, she had the intuition to say, I don't think this is really solving the problem. I don't think this is treating the root of the issue. There's something deeper going on here. Finally, she finds a really great functional medicine doctor. And this doctor, the first thing she wants to do is go on an elimination diet. She says, I want you to cut out dairy and meat and eggs and gluten and all that. And we will reintegrate this back into your diet one by one. And we'll see if any of these things are the trigger that's causing you to feel this discomfort and this pain. And of course, I'm the one doing all of the cooking for us. We're living together at this point. So now I'm going vegan and gluten free. And maybe it wasn't that challenging in some ways. We were already eating a lot of vegetarian meals. We were already eating a very nutritious diet. But I was really interested in sort of diving into this and learning about it. And I, of course, wanted to help her on her health journey. So we started eating vegan, gluten free meals. And about a month in, something kind of changed. Jamie started feeling better. She actually started feeling way better. She kind of came to me and she was like, I know I'm supposed to start reintegrating this stuff into my diet. She's like, but I've never felt this good in my life. I'm not sure I really want to add these things back in. So we kind of keep going down this path, and I'm not necessarily fully vegan during this time. I find my opportunities to go enjoy food, and but she's sticking to it, and she starts feeling better and better, and to the point where she makes a full recovery, and she decides, hey, I'm not living a very authentic life. I don't want to be a software engineer anymore. I want to be a photographer. So Jamie goes off and quits her job and she becomes a photographer. And she has just become a badass businesswoman. She has grown her business so fast, and it's been so impressive to watch her growth and progression as a human and to watch what food really did for her. And of course, food being one piece of the puzzle, but a huge piece of allowing her to really be her best self. And had it not been for Jamie, going off and starting her own business and deciding to live this authentic life, I may not be talking to you all here today. So I really credit this woman here for helping me become my best self, but also for really showing me the power that food can have on a human. So I want to ask you this question. What does your best self look like? Who would you be? Take a minute to think about that. Do you think that food has the power to help you unlock your best self? Because I would say this is great proof that it does. And I've seen this happen for more people. And I'm a huge believer that food really, truly does have that power to help us be our best selves. So who is this for? Who is this course for here today? Well, maybe you've been wanting to go plant-based or flexitarian. We'll get to that term in a second here, but you're not sure where to start. It's not the way you grew up eating. Maybe you have health issues and you really want to harness the power of plants like Jamie. Maybe you've seen other people make these great transformations and you're like, I want to do that too. I want to learn how to have more plants in my life, right? Maybe you went plant-based, but you found it challenging to sustain. Maybe you tried to go the vegan route and you just had to cut out all of your favorite foods and you were like, I can't live like this. I can't sustain this. Maybe you want to go plant-based, but you're not sure how you would feel full and satisfied. Maybe you're looking at all this food and you're like, I just don't think that that would fill me up. How could I possibly live like that? But most importantly, this right here today is for you if you love food. Because if you don't really care about food and you're really passionate about your health, well, it's not really that hard, you know. Eating for life is, you can cut out all these things and you can just totally be fine. But for me, I couldn't do that. I care about my health tremendously, but I also love food. And so that's where my transformation and my journey started, of learning how to make food that was amazing to fit my life and to fit what I wanted. And also to make sure I was getting that health and that nourishment at the same time, right? So here's what we're going to cover in the next 20 minutes or so. We're going to talk about how to unlock the combinations of flavor, texture, and nutrition to make food irresistible. We're going to talk about what you're doing wrong and why you're not enjoying plant-based food. We're going to talk about how to make everything faster and easier. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how to have more fun, because I'm all about having more fun. We're going to talk more about that too, but I think that is the key ingredient for success. So who am I? My name is Ben Mastracco. I used to be a food scientist for a long time. I have been a recipe developer for many years, and now I'm a flexitarian food coach. I have been featured on Fox. I've been featured on NBC. I have been published in multiple magazines. I have a degree in nutrition and food science. And I used to work at a company called Cliff Bar for a long time. Maybe you've heard of them. I was a food scientist there. I did stuff in the factory, as you can see here, but I also did a lot in the lab, where my job was basically to iterate over and over again, was just to try things out in the kitchen for years of just experimenting and exploring and just kind of seeing, you know, what we could do with all these things. And here's a photo from one of my first days on the job a very long time ago. I've also won a number of recipe contests, both for things in sort of the more vegan, vegetarian space, as well as the total opposite of using meat and cheese and all of that sort of thing. So I feel like I have a very good grasp of both. I understand both sides of the cooking spectrum, and I have used all of the tools that I've learned from both the vegan and the non-vegan side to really learn how to make food taste good. And really now plants are more of the paintbrush that I like to paint with. And I've really figured out how to make that taste good, as evidenced by some of these recipe contest winnings here, right? So my whole dietary philosophy is flexitarian. And maybe you haven't heard of this term before. It's kind of a newer, hipper term, but you're probably going to start to see it gaining momentum. But really what it means is mostly vegetarian, but still includes meat, fish, poultry, and dairy. It really just kind of comes down to balance, moderation, reduced consumption of animal products. Or if you want to go a step further, it just means mostly plants. And the reason I believe in this so much is because the healthiest, longest living people on our planet have been plant eaters. They have been people that have a diet high in veggies and beans and grains and nuts and all of that good stuff. But the reason I don't really believe in a fully vegan diet, at least from a health standpoint, is because I don't like extreme diets in any sense of the word, because I think an extreme diet leads to stress, it leads to burnout, and it really sets you up for failure. Anytime you're restricting so much stuff, especially things that give you joy, you're really setting yourself up for a tough time. You're not really setting yourself up for a sustainable journey with food if you're cutting out all of these things that you love. And so that's why I believe in a flexitarian diet, is I think it offers the best balance and sort of the best ratio. It still allows you to cheat and to splurge and have the foods that you love, but it's just a diet that is really more centered around making fresh fruits and vegetables and plants the foundation of your diet. So with that said, we're going to get right into my 3 steps for unlocking your best self with a mostly plant-based diet. So number 1 is embrace ethnic. So the typical American plate is this. It's a meat with two sides. That's how I grew up. That's probably how a lot of you grew up eating. And so when we kind of cut out that meat and up the veggie, we're not really left with a very satisfying plate here, right? That's kind of imbalance. It's kind of weak. It's not very appetizing. It's not very fun. And then, of course, if you want to cut out the starch, you want to go gluten-free or whatever, then you're just left with this. And I don't know about you, but that's not a very satisfying plate. Again, I love food, and I'm not going to get excited about this for dinner, and not nor is it balanced in any way either, of course, right? So when we think ethnic, though, not every other country, not every other part of the world centers their meals around the meat, right? So this is a Korean bibimbap, and bibimbap is a dish of stir-fried rice and veggies, and it oftentimes includes meat. Here, this one's got a fried egg. This one does not necessarily have meat, but the meat is not the main component of the dish. And a lot of other countries, meat is used more as a way to flavor your food than it is like the whole foundation of it, right? And something like this is a great example. And you've got all types of colors, and you got some broccoli and some cabbage and really good stuff in there. And if you want to add an egg, to use a little bit of animal protein to kind of like enhance a dish, well, I think that's fine, because the ratio of this dish is far more about the plants than it is the meat. Here's a veggie fried rice that I do. Again, fried rice being something that uses a little bit of egg to just kind of like enhance a dish, but this is loaded with veggies. It takes 15 minutes to make. This is sort of a staple in my house. I'll kind of throw it together with whatever I have in my house on Sunday night. Whatever I have left over from the week, that becomes my veggie fried rice, basically, right? Something like Italian food. We've got pasta here. Pasta is oftentimes just like a bunch of noodles and sauce, but it doesn't have to be that. Here we've got some butternut squash and some kale. I did use a little bit of Italian sausage in this to kind of like enhance the flavor. But again, it's not really centered around the meat. The meat is a small component of this dish, and there's lots of great healthy noodle options out there nowadays as well to make things even better. And my favorite example here is pizza. Pizza is a dish, some of the best slices of pizza I've ever had in my life had no meat on them at all. I'm a big fan of, going light on the cheese, heavy on the veggies. In this, I use olives and mushrooms to kind of add a really savory flavor to the pizza. And this uses a gluten-free chickpea crust, which is totally life-changing, one of my favorite recipes. But a great example of how, a dish doesn't need meat to be amazing when you're kind of thinking about this from an ethnic standpoint, right? So tip number 2 is stop trying to replace meat. And this kind of ties in to step number 1. But basically going back to this, when we decide we want to cut out meat, the first thing that a lot of us do is we think, okay, well, I'm going to just replace that meat. I'll replace it with tofu or, Beyond Burger or, something like that. That's where we go first. And I think that this is a slightly flawed way of looking at things. It's kind of more putting a Band-Aid on something than it is solving the problem. And the other thing is, it's also, very kind of hard to do this in a satisfying way. So I'll give you an example. Matching is always much harder than creating, right? The example here is that you love a burger and you're like, okay, well, I love burgers. I don't think I could ever be like plant-based. I don't think I could do this flexitarian thing. And you got a vegan friend and they're like, oh, don't even worry about it. You just switch it with a Beyond Burger. It's going to be totally easy. You're not even going to know the difference. It's going to be great, right? And they're like, oh, we've got this great vegan cheese too. Again, it's so good. It's absolutely delicious. You're not even going to miss cheese. Like, hey, we could even do bacon. We can give you a bacon there. Like bacon cheeseburger, going plant-based is super easy. And you try it and you're like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for me. If I have to give up burgers, I don't think I'm going to be able to go plant-based because this is not very good, right? And it just goes back to that matching is harder than creating, because when you have this image in your mind of what you want something to be, you can't really match it with plants. It just doesn't really work that well. A one-to-one swap just kind of sets you up for failure, because you're always going to be saying, even if it's good, you're going to be like, well, the meat version was better. Real bacon and real cheese and real beef, as good as these Beyond Burgers are getting as sort of mimicking things, it's such a hard thing to match that. And I think you're always going to be disappointed when something doesn't live up to what you want it to be. I'm a big believer that a meatball should have meat. It's in the title. You can't replace something with plants that's 100% meat. The meatball is 99% meat. And you're like, oh, we're just going to replace it with lentils and mushrooms and stuff. You're always going to be disappointed because it's just really, really hard to match something. And then when we talk about something like this, maybe these meatballs are great. Maybe they are, very close. Maybe they're this sort of engineered meatballs, kind of like the Beyond Burger. But this is where coming from the processed food industry, I have a pretty big issue with the way our food is processed. So here's an example of a vegan bacon. And as you kind of look at this here, I want you to think less about what you're seeing and more about what you're not seeing. Because what I'm not seeing here is anything that resembles real food. Every ingredient in here, except for maybe like spices and salt and water, maybe sugar, these are all super processed things. These are all ingredients that were extracted from, some other ingredient that's all undergone steps and steps of processing to be this. And then they kind of put them all together and they're like, now it's bacon. And I like to kind of call it like Frankenstein bacon, because I'm like, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, is it really that much healthier? Aren't you maybe just better off getting a couple of strips of really high quality bacon instead of putting all this fake processed food in your body? And of course, this is coming from a health standpoint. For vegans, there's a lot of the animal rights and that sort of thing, but we're not really talking about that today. I'm talking about, does this look healthier to you than something that's very high quality and actually did come from a trusted, reputable source, right? And it's up for debate, but I would say this is not healthy. So the real sort of solution here is you got to change your approach to meals. You have to look at your food a little bit differently. And I think that this is where people start to get stuck, is because they're like, if I'm not doing this one-to-one replacement, what does food look like? What does my plate look like? How do I do this? And my whole thing is it's about finding flavors and textures that complement each other to create something amazing. It's not about one thing. It's about a variety. It's about a combination of things that come together to create something that just is truly irresistible and fantastic. A great example of this is my Bootable. This is an ebook that I came out with a while ago. And the way the Bootable works is you have these different categories of ingredients. You have a bean, a nut, a raw green. In this case, it's some purple cabbage. You have a roasted vegetable, which is sweet potatoes here. You have a grain and a sauce. And it's this combination of things that turns this into something amazing. It's not just one thing. It's not just like, I'm going to replace meat with beans. It's finding all of these things that work together to create this harmony, to create this balance, to make something taste decadent and irresistible. And another example of this that I did, like this one uses bacon instead of nuts to give it that crunch, because I think the crunch and the soft and the sweet and the savory, all of these things are what you're looking for in a good meal, right? And, I think in this context, like a little bit of bacon is fine, because bacon is a very small component of this whole dish right here. There's so much nutrition and there's so much like nourishing food in here where I'm like, okay, well, a little bit of bacon to enhance a dish, I don't really think that's bad. But again, here we got some soft, creamy beans and some creamy sweet potatoes. We've got that light sort of spinach with a little bit of a crunch to it. The tomatoes add a little bit of juice. It's this combination of things that really makes it amazing, right? And especially avocado. That's going to make, that's going to make everything taste amazing. Maybe it's just the Californian in me, but I've had very few meals. When you put enough avocado on it, I think anything could kind of taste good, right? And here's a completely different example. This is a dish that I created that's a little bit different than anything you've ever seen. It's that same chickpea flatbread that I made the pizza out of earlier, but I spread it with hummus. I topped it with marinated artichoke hearts, some fresh onion, and some lightly dressed arugula. And again, you can't taste this and say, well, it's not as good as X, because there is no comparison. This is not like anything else. I'm not trying to mimic another dish. this kind of stands alone on itself. And you've got this crunchness, this freshness. You've got this little hint of acid from the vinegar on the arugula. It's all of these combinations of, sweet and creamy and salty and acidity that make this taste amazing. And it's not trying to mimic anything because it doesn't have to be anything. This is a dish that stands alone and is absolutely amazing. Step number 3 is give it time. And now I know this one might sound like a cop-out, but this is actually the most important tip of all, I would say. Because the way this works is the more you put nourishing food into your body, the more you actually start to crave it. There are all kinds of studies that show, if you continue to put this stuff in your body, if you ate broccoli every single day, you would eventually develop a taste for it. Even if you didn't really like it at first, it's just about kind of that momentum and that consistency and continuing to do this. So I'll give you an example of my journey with all this. This is a recipe that I developed a long time ago for a magazine. It's a ham and banana sandwich. Okay, it's fun. It's just sweet and salty and savory, really super tasty. But when I look at this sandwich now, this isn't something that I make in my own kitchen anymore because it just doesn't appeal to me in the same way. I see a bunch of meat and I see some cheese and a little bit of banana. And what I don't see is anything super nourishing, maybe outside of the banana a little bit, right? Whereas this is a sandwich that I did for a recipe contest that actually won the entire contest. This to me is so much more appetizing. And it's in large part because I can feel the nourishment when I look at it. But I also see this crunch. I see all these fresh vegetables. And to me, I've put so much of this in my body over the years. I've been experimenting with this style of eating for so long that I'm so much more attracted to this. So this is a satay veggie sandwich. I'm using kind of a peanut satay style sauce. And it's such a decadent, rich sauce. This was me wanting to make an adult peanut butter sandwich. I was a huge fan of peanut butter sandwiches as a kid. And as an adult, I kind of thought, man, I love a good peanut butter sandwich, but I wish I could get some more nourishment in there somehow. So I added soy sauce and some sriracha and some lime juice. And I kind of made this into this really savory, rich sauce. And like everybody that touches this sauce falls in love with it. And you smother that over fresh veggies, and all of a sudden, it's absolutely amazing. And I know that for 99% of the population out there, they'd probably prefer the ham sandwich. But when I see this, my mouth starts to water. This does it for me. And it's in part because it tastes amazing, but it's also because I've just been eating this way for a number of years. And over that time, I have really strongly grown to prefer this. This is another example of a recipe I did for a magazine. This is a roasted cauliflower salad with fried chickpeas. I fried the chickpeas in olive oil. It's like a lemony mustard vinaigrette. You've got some red onion, you've got some mint, you've got a little bit of like a dried cranberry in there. And this is a meal that stands alone. And going back to, finding the combinations of flavors and textures, you have this soft, roasty cauliflower. You have these really crunchy, really light chickpeas, and everything else just kind of like plays their role. And to me, like, this is so satisfying. This is an absolutely delicious meal. Whereas this is the way that I used to eat, right? This looks like a pork tenderloin here. This is not my photo. And I see a little bit of vegetables over there, and I see this pork. But when I look at this, number one, now I think this is boring, right? I'm like, it's fine, but it's pretty boring. It's just this one-dimensional meal of like meat. Whereas I look at this and I see all these combinations of flavors and textures and all this like wonderful nourishment. And I just 10 times out of 10, I would rather have this over meat. And again, it comes from two things. It comes from knowing how to make this food taste good. And it comes from just having done it for years, of having put this stuff in my body for years. This is just like, this makes me a happy human being right here. When you put this in front of me, this makes me a happy man, right? Because it's all about the momentum and the consistency. This is, if you take nothing away from this class here, take this away: momentum and consistency. The more you do this, the easier it becomes and the more you start to enjoy it. But you have to have that momentum and the consistency. So many people, they start a diet and they stop and they start, and when you do that, you kind of lose all of your consistency, you lose all of your momentum, and you have to start over from scratch, and you have to work twice as hard to get back up to where you were. Whereas if you can just kind of keep things going, even when things get tough, if you can just kind of, maybe you're not eating 5 healthy meals a week, but you're eating 2 healthy meals a week. Well, that is going to help you continue to build those muscles and continue to build those taste buds and to change your taste buds over time. But you have to stay consistent. And really, this is what my process comes down to. Momentum and consistency are such important parts of why my process works, right? Because this is built into my process. Together with my clients, we're building a system to fit your life that makes the momentum and the consistency easier. We're talking about meal planning and meal prep, and we're finding foods that you like and easy recipes. And so once you've been doing it for a while, once our time is done together, all you have to do is keep on doing what you've been doing, because you've been living it. You've been enjoying the food. You've been experiencing the benefits of a mostly plant-based diet, and you've seen what your best self looks like. And because we've tailored everything to totally fit your life, keeping that momentum going almost feels effortless. This is totally the foundation of what I believe. And I'm such a huge proponent of just keeping things going. Even when things get tough, just keeping them going as much as you can. And this is exactly where I help my clients. And this is exactly a huge part of why my process works. And of course, you got to have fun. This is the whole thing with keeping the momentum and the consistency. The fun is what makes it easier. And you've seen some great examples of food here that was fun, not just to eat, but I think to make. And some of you might disagree, but creating this stuff in the kitchen and expanding your mind, it's so much fun. And that fun is how you keep the momentum and the consistency going. Because if you're not having fun, you're never going to be able to sustain this in the long term. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a client of mine named Rebecca. So when Rebecca and I started working together, she had chronic health issues. She was confused about how to eat with her dietary restrictions because of these health issues. She was uncomfortable, nervous in the kitchen. Her husband was doing all of the cooking, and he was really overwhelmed. He was really stressed, working full time on top of all this. She was a very picky eater, which makes everything a little bit more challenging, right? Because it becomes harder to figure out what you can make. And she was not eating healthy at all. She really wasn't sure what a healthy diet really looked like. And for her, with all these health issues, she kind of came to the point. She came to me saying, I think this is the next step in my journey. What happened is, this is what she fell in love with. She fell in love with a Buddha bowl. We made her a delicious muhammara sauce. And muhammara is like a roasted red pepper, a walnut sauce, really creamy, really rich, a nice tang from some red wine vinegar, but a very simple thing to make. And she smothered that over these Buddha bowls, these bowls full of plants and good stuff. And she just totally fell in love with it. I think it was maybe our second or third week working together when she found this. And the next week we were meeting, and I was like, okay, Becca, so I gave you some new recipes to try. And before I could even finish my sentence, she cut me off, and she was just like, they were amazing. And you could see her face kind of light up when she said it, where she was just like, she had seen the light. She was just like, oh my gosh, this food was so good. And it was like, you could see how much fun she had with it at that point, because she felt so good. She was like, not only did I find food that was nourishing, but she found food that she actually enjoyed and loved eating. And that is when I knew that we were going to be just fine and that she was going to hit all of her goals, which she absolutely did. After 3 months, she fell in love with chickpeas, kale, and quinoa. These were the 3 things that she really just went indulged in and felt super good about. She transitioned to nearly a vegan diet, which I was beyond what we had sort of intended to do. But once she found the food that she liked, she just found it so much easier than she thought. We found these plant-based recipes that she loved that were totally easy to make. She even started cooking meals for her husband, which she was so proud about. But we found some really simple, easy meals. I think we did some 15-minute meals from her that were just really delicious and really flavorful. And she felt really confident about it. And she was so excited when she was able to start doing this for her husband. It was such an amazing transformation. In one of our last sessions, she said, if my mom was still alive to see me eating kale, she still wouldn't believe it. She did not ever expect that she would come out of this with this transformation. She didn't really expect to enjoy this food the way that she did, but we hit on the right things. We found the stuff that she really liked. And after that, it became so much easier. And the final thing she said to me was, she was like, hey, this is now fun. She was like, this all used to be so stressful and now it's fun. And that is exactly what I want to do for you. This is what I want to do for every single person out there, because I'm such a believer that when you can connect with the fun, that's when your whole life changes for the better. So again, I want to ask you this question. What does your best self look like after you've seen this? After you've seen all of this stuff here, do you feel like plants can do that for you? Do you feel like food can do that for you? So if you want a meal plan that sets you up for success, if you want to enjoy the food you're eating and actually feel good about it, if you want to build the momentum and finally keep it going once and for all and stop the yo-yo dieting and the off and on, and most importantly, if you want to have fun, if you really want to start having fun with food and ditch the stress and ditch the unhealthy junk that just makes you more stressed out, then click the button below and set up your free strategy session today. We will get going on creating a meal plan for you. We will find the foods that you enjoy. We will find the foods that will make your life better so you can be your best self. But wait, there's more. So we are in the end of 2019 here. We're almost in 2020. Can you believe that? How weird does it feel to say 2020? And I know that you have food-related resolutions. And I know this because diet-related New Year's resolutions are the #1 most common New Year's resolution. And I want to make things easier for you. I started this business because I truly, truly wanted to see people have success and to stop being so stressful. And I really knew that I knew how to do this for people and that I could be the person to help people through this journey. And I want to help you with your journey in 2020. So here's what I'm going to do. I have a little bonus that I'm giving away for the month of January only until my spots fill up. 1 month of unlimited email and Voxer support on top of my original package, right? So what this means is after we're done working together, you still have access to me for a full month. Voxer is an app that I use for voice messaging where we can send messages to each other back and forth really, really quickly and easily. So you have an extra month of support so you can continue to keep this momentum going and not feel like you're totally without me when we're done. But on top of that, I'm going to throw in a free bonus session. Another one-on-one session. The way our sessions work is I'm working with people, twice a month, maybe 3 times a month, but a bonus session typically amounts to about 2 extra weeks because we are always working together in between each session because I want you to feel supported and I want you to feel like you have, the answers to all of your questions. So what you're getting is an extra 2 weeks of support and an extra bonus session and these 4 weeks of additional Voxer and email support. So that accounts to an additional 6 weeks of coaching support, right? And the reason is because, again, we talked so much about momentum and consistency, and that is what I want to do for you. I want to help you. 6 additional weeks of consistency and support and accountability and changing your tastes and allowing your body to adapt is going to set you up for success. I know it will. I've seen it happen, and I know that once you start connecting with the fun and the joy of all this, it's going to make everything so much easier. And through 6 extra weeks, we have more time to work slowly because, the transformation doesn't happen overnight. Again, it's about the consistency, but we want to have a little bit of time together for you to build those muscles, to change your taste buds, and to really grow into your best self. And with 6 additional weeks, I mean, this is a huge special offer, and it's not something that I'm going to do for very long, only through January or until my spots fill up. And I don't work with a ton of people at a time because I want to make sure that I give my full effort and attention to each individual client. So if you are ready for this transformation, if you are truly ready to step into your best self, if you're ready to unlock your potential and live the life that you want to live, then click the button below. Let's set up your free strategy session. Let's get you going today. Let's get your meal plan going. Let's get you set up on the path to success so you don't have the same resolutions in 2020 or in 2021 that you're going into for 2020. Thank you so much for watching. I'm excited to work with you. I'm excited to hear from you. And I'm really excited to get you going on how to help you become your best self with a mostly plant-based diet.